welcome to Bookshare Office Hours. We're looking forward to answering a lot of your questions about Bookshare. I'll take a minute and just give some basic information about Bookshare, by way of introductions. It does seem like from the questions, many of you are brand new to Bookshare. So let me bring up some basic slides that we can go over right now. Okay, and I wanted to mention that joining me today on this webinar, helping with Q&A, are two people. One, my colleague Laura Ronberg, she'll be answering a lot of the questions in the chat. And then my colleague Angela Griffith from Bookshare's customer support team is on the line with me as well. Angela, you want to say hi?
Hi there.
Okay, so Angela is prepared to answer questions as well. So we will sort of tag team. I'll read the questions and either answer it myself or pitch it Angela's way, and she'll answer it. And I'll be able to share my screen to show some things as well. But let me go ahead and just start with a slide about Bookshare, just giving some basic information. What is Bookshare? Bookshare is an ebook library that makes reading easier. So people with reading barriers such as dyslexia, blindness, and physical disabilities can read in ways that work better for them. And so we'll get into the qualifications, but basically anyone who has a condition that limits their ability to effectively read or process printed text in the way that someone would who didn't have any barriers probably qualifies for Bookshare, but the decisions about qualifications are made by the individuals who work most closely with those people, those students, or if they're adults. We actually don't make those decisions here. We can just tell you what the law says that governs Bookshare eligibility, and then you make your best determination. And so I'll definitely talk through that in just a second here. But basically when people sign up for Bookshare, they have access to the full collection, and they can read in ways that work better for them. They can just listen to books in audio. They can follow along with the audio and highlighted text. Every single book in Bookshare is available to be read that way, depending on what tool you're using to read. They can read in large type, and they can read in Braille. Bookshare has more than 825,000 titles. All are available in multiple formats, including that audio plus highlighted text, as I mentioned before. So the collection includes lots of textbooks, lots of upskilling books, so books for improving one's skill set, all the bestsellers, both fiction and nonfiction, periodicals, and lots of books for student leisure reading, which we hope that they're doing some of during this time. Best of all, Bookshare is free for all qualified U.S. students of any age. That funding comes to us from the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. And if someone has a qualifying condition but they're not a student, then they could pay for a Bookshare membership, which is $50 a year for unlimited access to the collection, So they can literally download, hundreds or thousands of books for that $50 a year. And it offers customized reading on nearly any device. Pretty much every device that people are using to read these days, Bookshare has a solution for it. We work with a lot of third-party companies who make apps and who make software, and we make sure that their tools read Bookshare books so that there are a lot of options for people. Here are some of the options: Chromebooks and computers. People can read using Bookshare Web Reader, which is a free web-based reader that is available for every member of Bookshare. There's a company called CaptiVoice that makes a web-based tool as well that's nice and integrates directly with Bookshare. And then all Bookshare books can be downloaded as Microsoft Word documents and opened up in Microsoft Word. And if people have the Immersive Reader, which is a feature on Microsoft Word, they can have the book read out loud to them and see the text highlighted as well. So that's a nice option. And then we work with several app companies to make apps that read Bookshare books for the mobile devices. So for either iPad or Android, we recommend an app called Dolphin Easy Reader, and that's a free app, and it integrates directly with Bookshare. It works really nicely. And then students might also like CaptiVoice. Their iPad app is nice, and there's a free version and then a paid version. And then Voice Dream Reader is another app that comes highly recommended. A lot of our members really like that one. There is a cost to it, but has a lot of nice features as well. Basically, there's two types of Bookshare accounts. Schools set up an organizational account and then add students who qualify. Teachers then go in and assign books to those students in the app. When teachers add students to an organizational account, they give them a username and password, and then students use that username or password to log into Bookshare to see the books that have been shared with them by their teachers. But students with that type of login can only open books that have been shared with them by their teachers. And then an individual member can sign up, somebody can sign up separate and apart from a school. They can set up an account that way, or a parent can always go through a school, have the student added to a school account first, and then upgrade that membership to an individual membership, a full individual membership, so that they have access to the full collection. And that's actually the method that we recommend, if at all possible. Work through your school, get the student added to a school account, then it's easy for the parent to upgrade the student to a full individual membership, which gives them access to the full collection without having to go through the teacher. Angela, do you want to add anything about Bookshare's benefits?
I think you've pretty much covered it. The only other thing I might add is, you can also add access books on various Braille devices for those who are visually impaired or blind.
Yes, excellent point.
Like the humanware devices that are familiar to some schools.
Yes, absolutely great point. Okay, so let me just talk through a couple more things, and then I'm going to jump into some of the questions coming into the Q&A. So here are the qualifications. We often get questions about this. So who qualifies for Bookshare? I should mention at the outset that Bookshare's qualifications are determined by copyright law, not by education law. So they are not necessarily worded in the same ways that you all word your IEPs and things like that. So the way the law reads, this is almost a verbatim of what the law says. It says an eligible person is one who is blind or has a visual impairment or perceptual or reading disability, rendering them unable to read printed works to substantially the same degree as a person without an impairment or disability, or is otherwise unable through physical disability to hold or manipulate a book or to focus or move the eyes to the extent that would be normally acceptable for reading. And all of that is as determined by a competent authority possessing experience in making such determinations. So that's basically what the law says, and it was the copyright law under which Bookshare operates. It's actually an exception to copyright law that makes it legal for entities such as Bookshare to distribute books with these different reading barriers without violating copyright law. That was revised within the past year or so. So that is the new language that is in that law. So basically, to join Bookshare, someone has to have one of those qualifying conditions that I listed, and they have to have a competent authority, whether it's a teacher, a special education teacher, or a resource teacher, or someone who has background or familiarity with that area of disability, who can determine that, yes, this person has a condition that qualifies them for Bookshare, and they just by adding a student to a school account, for example, a teacher is making that determination. Teacher is deciding, yes, the student qualifies. And then we also have a cross-qualification agreement with another organization called Learning Ally. And so if someone is a Learning Ally member, more than likely they can use that as a basis of qualifying for Bookshare. Okay, so with that, I'm going to get into some of the questions that have come in, and thank you for submitting these. And I got some in advance as well, so I'm going to do the best I can to do that. So this first one from Pamela says, my district is signed on with Bookshare, but when I try to set up my account, it says I have to go through another teacher in my building, but this teacher has never used Bookshare and she is a science teacher. Okay, so the way that works on our system, if you try to go in and set up a new account for your school, but there's already an account that exists for your school, we just reach out to that person who created the account and we say, hey, this person wants to get on your Bookshare account. And we've actually added some additional resources here at Bookshare to match you with match educators who want to get on accounts with accounts that already exist, if there is one that already exists, because we want to make sure that you're getting in and being able to add students and assign books. It sounds like, Pamela, in this particular case that I don't know, this person who was a science teacher somehow signed up for Bookshare at some point. That's the name that was provided when the sign up was done. So why don't you send an email to membership@bookshare.org with your situation, and we will get that resolved for you. We'll either delete that account so that you can start a new one, or we'll help you in some other way. So we'll get you going. So send an email to membership@bookshare.org. Okay, so the next question from, answer that question. Okay, from Kara says, can you discuss the various formats of downloading books, DAISY, EPUB, etc., including what types of students best benefit from each? Angela, do you want to take that one about just basically the formats and when they would be used?
So the formats are going to be based on what devices they're using, basically. So for example, if you're using an iPad within one of the apps, the format DAISY or EPUB is going to be predetermined in the app that they're using. So you don't have to change any of the settings in your Bookshare account, because the app will determine the format that needs to be used for that situation. Microsoft Word format is fairly straightforward. It's basically used with the Microsoft Office products. And audio, so the MP3 audio is more for MP3 players, and the web reader, which is our Read Now option, is usually for the web browser, the web reader experience.
Right. Yeah, and I would just add to that that many of the tools that read Bookshare books now know what format they need, and they basically do that on the back end, and so you don't have to worry about that. If you're downloading books for students, which actually, again, students can download the books themselves, and so they can download it in Word. EPUB is a widely used format now for many reading apps, and many reading tools can read EPUB, but also the books application on both the iPad and the Mac computer use the EPUB format. So if you download it in that, the students can read it in that app, as well as many other apps read EPUB. But I would say that the easiest way to do this, let me actually share my screen, and I will show you guys some easier ways to do assigning books and having books read by students and things. Okay, so I want to show you guys both the teacher experience and the student experience. So I'm going to go to bookshare.org, and I'm going to log in right now as though I'm a teacher. So I'm logging into a school account, and when you log into your school account, on your My Bookshare page, it's sort of your landing page. Anytime you have a question or aren't sure what to do, go back to the My Bookshare page. So on the left side, I see some links, one of which is members. And this is where I'm going to add a student member. I'll just do this really quickly. So I click, there's a little person with a plus sign at the top of the members list, and that's the Add Member button. There's also a button at the bottom of the roster that says Add Member. So I can use either one of those to add a student. So I'm going to go ahead and add a student. So I'm just going to make this student. I just usually make up a name, and then I assign, this is where you assign a username and password, and any teacher on the account can add a student to the account, and any teacher on the account can set up the username or password. Certainly the best solution, we think, is to set it up when you're adding the student. You can go ahead and assign the username and password right here, but you can always, if it hadn't been assigned in the beginning, someone can always do that after the fact. So let's just say that this student was born in 2004, which would make them, let's say, a high school sophomore, so 10th grade. So you can indicate district and school here if you'd like, but you don't have to. You can leave those blank. We do need to know what the disability type is, so whether it's a visual disability, a learning disability, or a physical disability. So you check whichever one is appropriate here. Over here, we're asking if the user, if the student has an IEP or is served under 504. We'd like to know that information, but you'll note that this is not a required field, and meaning we do know there are some situations where a student might qualify for Bookshare but has not either an IEP and they're not being served under 504. We think those situations are not as common because most kids who qualify are already being accommodated at school under one of these plans, but there might be a student who, has is showing signs of a reading issue, processing issue or whatever, but hasn't been formally tested or hasn't been formally diagnosed or hasn't been evaluated under special education yet, and therefore doesn't yet have an IEP and doesn't have a 504. So if someone can certify, someone with background in that area of disability can certify that yes, the student is having an issue that's preventing them from reading or processing printed text, they can go ahead and sign them up. And so we ask that you indicate which plan the student has, but again, this is not a required field. You can leave the reading preferences alone. There's not really any need to do that right now, so I'm just going to click Save. And after I add a student, so this is student 9303, it's automatically asking me if I want to assign books to the student. So I can go ahead and pick if there's a particular book that I want to assign to the student that they maybe I want to assign, so I can just type in the title of the book. I can find the book here. And then if I scroll down to the bottom, so I have to use my dialog box is too big, so I'm using Control minus to make my dialog box a little smaller. So then it says assign and close or assign and add more. So I'm going to assign and close. So I've added that one book to this new student, student 9303. Another thing I can do is I can assign lists of books to the student. So if I go to the Browse section here, this is where you'll find lots of lists of books, the New York Times children's bestsellers, lots of different lists. I want to show all of the teachers out there some nice lists that we've collected. One is Lexile collections, so books at different Lexile levels. We also have accelerated reader collections, I think under leveled readers. We have the Lexiles, we have Fountas and Pinnell. Here's a bunch of accelerated reader collections. So these are all based on certain accelerated reader categories. So let's say my student is reading at this level and I want to share this list with that student. I can go ahead and select it. I need to subscribe to it. That's the button up here at the top that looks like a backwards Wi-Fi symbol. I'm going to go ahead and select that box. So now I've subscribed to that list. I brought it into my account, and now I want to add my member to it. So two things have to happen with a reading list. You have to subscribe to it, and you have to add your student to it. Otherwise, your student isn't going to see it when they log in. So I'm going to pick a couple students that I think are interested in this particular list. Here's my student 9303, whom I just added recently. So now I've added selected members. So now I can see on this list, this list has 176 titles, so plenty of books for my student to read that are right in their reading category. And I can see that I've shared it with two members. On the members tab, I see that there are two students who've been assigned to it. And I see that right now I'm the only teacher who has access to this list, but I can add other teachers to this list as well. I can say, hey, the teachers are on my same account, so I've got a bunch of test teachers on here that maybe I want to add them to this list also so they too can share it with students. And again, this is teachers who are already on your organizational account. Okay, so I'm going to log in now to Bookshare using that new student, that username and password I just added I just created. Okay, hopefully I typed that correctly. That's the student I just added. Let's give it a whirl here. Okay, good. So I've logged in now as the student. So I was logged in previously as a teacher, but now I'm logged in as a student. And you might have noticed that I opened a Chrome browser to do this, and there's a reason for that. It's because Chrome supports the Bookshare web reader, as does Safari, but neither Internet Explorer nor Firefox have some of the same functionality that I'll show you in a minute. You can log in, you can open a book in Bookshare web reader on those browsers, but you won't be able to read it out loud or see the text highlighted. So I've logged in as my student. Now when the student scrolls down, they see 3 tabs. They see recent books, so if they had already been reading any books, they'll show up there. But this is a brand new student, so obviously they don't have that. But then they have an assigned books tab, and here they see that book that I assigned to them, Librarian of Auschwitz. And then here they have reading lists. And here's that reading list, that accelerated reader list that I assigned to them. So if I want to go ahead and, if I'm the student and I'm now logged in, and I want to go ahead and, open a book that my teacher assigned to me. So I open this list. Wow, there's a lot of books on this list. They all look really good. Let me find one that is the one I want to start with. Let's just give this one a whirl, Owl Moon. So students have a couple options when they're logged in. They have a Read Now button. Now I should note that when a teacher is logged into Bookshare and they're looking at a book list, they do not see the Read Now button for any copyrighted books. And that's because they're not really the Bookshare members for whom the books are intended. They'll only see a Read Now button if the book is out of copyright, if it's not protected under copyright law. And that we have about 10,000 of those kinds of books in Bookshare, like classics and books that are publicly, like public domain books. So teachers will see the Read Now button, but otherwise for a copyrighted book, the teacher will not see the Read Now button. So and the teacher, if they download it, they need to select it for a student. But anyway, right now I'm logged in as a student, so I'll show you the student options. So a student can either select Read Now, which I'll do in a second, or they can choose to download it. There are a number of formats here, but the ones that students would most need to download would be either Word, if they want to read the book in Microsoft Word, or upload it to a OneDrive or whatever. They might need it for in EPUB for something like the Books app on the iPad or the Mac computer, or other reading apps, or they might need it in Daisy. But more than likely, if a student is using a tool that uses Bookshare, that reads Bookshare books, it already knows what format it needs to download in. So most students don't have to download the books themselves unless they want to read it in Word. So they can choose to download, or they can choose Read Now, and that's what we recommend. This is the simplest option. So it takes a minute or two for the book to package, and then I will show the book being read. So it's always going to open up to a copyright page. I'm going to use the table of contents. And this is a very short book, so let me try to get to a page. Okay, so here's the first page of the book, and you can see that it has the images just the same way that the printed book does. So if we just click the play button here at the very top, it should play for us.
Owl Moon by Jane Yolen.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so here's a page with some actual text on it from the book.
It flew back into the forest. Time to go home, Pa said to me.
Okay, so that is a student opening up a Bookshare book in Bookshare web reader. You can see that they logged in, they found their book, they selected the Read Now button, and they're given the option to open it in Bookshare web reader and have it read out loud. And then I do want to point out that we have a partnership with TextHelp's Read and Write, with TextHelp, who makes Read and Write for Google Chrome. This is a Chrome extension, and when you have this tool, you can see that it turns on the toolbar and it lays over on top of WebReader. And I really like it because it offers some better voices, and also the contrast is stronger. So
The Kind of Hope.
So that is an example, though, of how the student logs in, finds a book, and reads, and which is the easiest thing to do. Students can also log into Bookshare through apps like Dolphin Easy Reader. And what I want to do is just quickly show you. So if a student is logged in and they go to My Bookshare, if they click on this blue box here in their My Bookshare page, it says Discover Ways to Read Our Books. They are taken to sort of a wizard that helps them figure out, like, okay, now they want to read on a tablet or a phone. So then it says, okay, well, what kind, Android or iOS? Okay, let's go with Android. And here's that Dolphin Easy Reader app that I mentioned. So this takes them to a page that walks through how to read Bookshare books on Dolphin Easy Reader, how to install the app, and then all the, how to exactly to read the books. So we recommend that students start out with Bookshare Web Reader and then follow this wizard if they want to read in other ways. Okay, let's see. So there was a question from Bonnie. I'm having trouble opening the book once it's downloaded, and that's if you're a teacher and you're downloading the book and you downloaded it, let's say in Daisy or something, you have to have a tool that reads that language, that format of book. To open it. And that's why we recommend actually just going through either Bookshare, have the student log in and go through something like Bookshare Web Reader or one of the apps, because then it will open directly. I've assigned books, this is from Andrew, I've assigned books to my students. How can I ensure the student has the book to access? So that's a very good question. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that as well. So I'm logged in as a student currently, as I mentioned. So when I go to the My Bookshare page, of course, I mentioned before that I have, I can see as a student, I'm logged in, I can see that I have access to reading lists. But let me go back to my, where I was logged in as a teacher, and I'll show you what the teacher's view of that is. Okay, so as a teacher, I have a couple of ways that I can see what students have access to. So within the reading lists themselves, if I go to my reading lists, I have a bunch. My fake teacher account here has a bunch of lists. So let's take this 39 clues list here. I can see which students have been assigned to this list. I can also see what teachers are on it. I can add students, I can add teachers to this list. But the other thing I can do in my member roster, I can select a certain member and I can see what they have access to. So let me, if I go to that 9303 student I just added right here, if I click on their last name, it brings up a little dashboard and I can see the books that have been assigned to the student, assigned books. I can see what books they've downloaded. So I can see that the student downloaded Owl Moon. That's what we just we did. And you can see that it was done on the web reader and on what day. And then I can also see what reading lists the student has been assigned as well. So here's that accelerated reader list that we had assigned. So as a teacher in your members list, when you select a last name, that's where you can see what they have access to, what they've been assigned, what reading lists they've been assigned, and whether or not they've downloaded anything. So here's a student who's had 2 books assigned to them, and they have 2 reading lists shared with them, but you can see that they have not actually downloaded any books. They have not accessed any of the books. So that's a good information for you to have as a teacher to figure out that you've got to do a little bit more intervention there. Okay. From Kathleen, do students see only text or are there graphics? So you could see in the example that I showed on Bookshare Web Reader that if the book has images, those images do come up in Bookshare Web Reader. Okay, so good question from Pam. Right now, is this free to all students because of COVID-19? So unfortunately, no. We are operating, we still operate under the same copyright law that I mentioned earlier. And we We just can't, we legally can't open it up to every student, though we wish we could. I do want to point out, though, that I mentioned before about those 10,000 freely available books that are in Bookshare, and I want to point out where you can find those and some other great resources that we're pointing people to right now as well to allow them to be able to access books that are not Bookshare books but are certainly good content to have. Let me show you that really quick. So if I go to a browser and go to just the Bookshare homepage, and then if you click on the Learning at Home During COVID-19 Get Tips, it takes you to a page with a lot of really good resources, Learning at Home resources for educators, Learning at Home resources for parents, and then over here on the right it says here's more free and paid books. And so if you click that link, find more books, the very first information here is about the 10,000 books that are available in Bookshare to anyone. And one of our team members actually went in and made some lists of these books that are available. So here's free books for all, free upskilling books for all, and free children's books for all. So these are available to anyone. You don't have to be logged in. So these are an example of books that even teachers will see the Read Now button for, and anyone will see it. You don't even have to be logged into Bookshare. You'll see the Read Now button, and you can open those up in Bookshare Web Reader, or you can download them. And we have instructions here on learn how to find and read freely available Bookshare books. Please follow these instructions here, and it'll walk you through. But then here are a bunch of other sources of either free or significantly reduced books that are available to students during the pandemic. Let me go back and see what other questions have come up here. Okay, Robin asks how to use EPUB files. So as I mentioned, a lot of different tools read EPUB. Let's see, Angela, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the EPUB file is, it usually doesn't have to be used because it's used within the app. So the apps pick that format when appropriate. So on the back end, it's automatic pretty much. There are EPUB readers that you can use on PCs, but a lot of them are, you do need to purchase them. iBooks also uses EPUB, the Books app for Apple. So if you're looking for an iPad or Mac, you can use the EPUB that way.
Right. Yep. Yeah. The iBooks, well, it's now called Books.
Books
I think
now.
the iBooks. Yeah, Books on the iPad. That is the one that I'm most familiar with. I believe Dolphin Easy Reader also uses EPUB, but again, those apps know what format it needs when you go to download a book with the app.
Reader as well.
And VoiceStream, yeah. So we've got a question about how to sign up for Bookshare, and so I'll just quickly go back to the Bookshare page, the Bookshare homepage, and I'm going to log out so that I see the sign up today button here. So if you haven't joined Bookshare, the way to do that is go to bookshare.org, select sign up today, and then you're choosing, if you're signing up your school, you want to sign up as an organization. If you are either someone who yourself has a qualifying reading barrier, or you're a parent of a student with a qualifying reading barrier and you want to just sign up separate and apart from the school, you sign up your child separate and apart from your child's school, you would use sign up individual. But if you're a teacher, you're going to sign up as an organization. So then you just follow the steps there. And for all of our processes that used to require printing some kind of form and sending that in, we either have or very shortly will have workarounds in place that offer paperless ways to complete those functions, because of the fact that, right now very few people have access to printers and things like that. So we've definitely made that available. What's the difference between you and the public library? Angela, do you want to take that one?
Ours is our library is solely online, and all of our books are pretty much offered in accessible formats, whereas the public library, they may or may not be accessible to people with reading barriers. And of course, people have access to a huge collection in one place, basically.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a great point. More than 825,000 titles. All of them are accessible. So more than likely, the ebooks that you can get from the public library are not going. They may be available in audio, but very few have the audio plus text. So they're not ideal for students with reading challenges in that respect.
And our books can be, accessed on different devices, depending on what the needs are. So it's a good one-stop place for accessible books.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Okay, so there's a question about deaf students who are language delayed and English isn't their first language. Would they qualify? And so deafness and students who are hard of hearing, that's kind of a tricky category because technically that is not considered a print-specific disability, meaning it's not that they have an issue with reading or processing printed text per se. It's more of an overall language issue. So in the past, that has not typically been a qualifying disability, but I think if the student also has a processing issue or some other issue that does meet the criteria, then, you want to just look for that, basically. We, certainly would love for every student to be able to access Bookshare, but we do have to follow that copyright law. So we just ask that you review the law and make your best determination.
Like someone who's blind, along with being hard of hearing, could qualify.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And similarly, someone who's an English language learner wouldn't necessarily qualify for Bookshare on that basis because that's someone whose issue is not specific to printed text. They can read print, let's say, in their own language. They just can't read it in English. So the print is not the problem in their case. So that doesn't automatically that doesn't automatically meet the criteria. But if someone is an English language learner and they have a comprehension issue, they can't comprehend even in their own language. If they were to read text, they have difficulty with processing or comprehension, then that's more, the type of thing that would qualify them for Bookshare. A learning disability, a reading disability, that's what would qualify them. So the good question that says, on my student list, all students have organization under membership. Should I edit this and put in a different password? So if they say organization, let me actually go back to my teacher account. If they say organization, it just means that they only have the access to the school account. And that doesn't necessarily mean they don't have a password, however. It just means that they don't have a full individual membership. So let me go in and I'll go into my Bookshare. So I'm logged in as a teacher. If I go into my member roster, so of all of my fake kids that I have added, so under membership, so some of mine only have organization, a couple have org plus individual. That means we've gone through the step to add that full individual membership for the students so that they can access anything in the collection. And but the ones that have organization do have usernames and passwords. If you go to the little pencil icon next to the student name, you can see here I've assigned a username and password to the student, but it's just that when that student logs in, the only thing they'll be able to access is whatever has been either assigned to them by their teacher, shared with them on a reading list, or downloaded for them. You can see this is what students have access to here when they log into this kind of account. When a student logs in using a full individual membership, they can access any book in the collection, not just the things that have been shared with them by their teachers. So we definitely recommend that. And so you'll see now I'm logged in as an individual member, a full individual member, and I can, search for any book that I want and open it. So search for, let's see what we have in terms of science textbooks. So yeah, I can access any of these books that have the Read Now button next to them. And these are not, more than likely not books my teacher has shared with me, but because I have that full individual membership, I can access them. When logged in as a student, let me log in as the student with that limited membership that the school can provide. I'll show you how the student upgrades to a full individual membership. Over on the left side of their My Bookshare page, there's a link that says upgrade to an individual membership. So if the student is at home and they log into that school account that their school set up for them, then they can click on that link and then click sign up, and then they complete this form. The parent fills out their information. The student has to provide a new username and password, and this has to be an email address, the username. It can be the parent's email address or it can be the student's email address. But that becomes what they log in with from then on out. They log in with this username and password that they put in here. But they can allow the teacher, when they set this up, they can allow the teacher to have access to that. So if they're in the future, they forget their username or password, the teacher can help them reset it. So we do make that available now. Most of the other questions it looks like we've answered. Does the time frame for requested college textbooks take longer than novels, etc.? So that's a great question. And yes, we do have textbooks, as you could see. The time frame for textbooks is going to be determined, well, a couple of things. If we can get it from the publisher directly, we certainly will try to do that. But any textbook that requires a lot on, that depends a lot on images or graphics will take definitely longer to process on our end. So we have to purchase a copy of the book, then we chop and scan it, and we add it to Bookshare. And because it could be a very complex book, it'll take us a little time to do all the proofreading and make sure that all the content is in the right place. So yes, that can take a little while. So we do ask you give us as much notice as possible. Okay, so question from Kelly: in the future, is there a possibility that Bookshare or other digital libraries will be available for use by all, regardless of disability label or not? I'm thinking of my students who do not have a diagnosis related to a print deficit but are auditory or multimodal learners. So again, we really would love to be able to offer it to every student, but we're bound by copyright laws, so we ask that you just review the qualifications and make your best determination there. I don't see that changing anytime soon, unfortunately, though I believe Internet Archive is another resource that you could check out as far as books, and they might be operating under a different approach right now, so you could try there as well. Internet Archive is another library of ebooks. How do you request a book to be on Bookshare? Right, great question. So once you're logged into Bookshare, if you go to, let's see, if you go to the Help Center, and I want to point out the Help Center is a robust source of great information. If you click on Help Center, you can enter a word here in the search the Help Center box, and it will give you articles on that subject. As well, we have the Learning Center here, and the Learning Center has an Educator's Get Started guide that walks you through how to get started with Bookshare. There's also some additional resources, and there's a page here of how-to guides and videos. So we do recommend you check those out. We've got lots of videos and how-to guides on a wide variety of subjects. But to request a book, basically you go into Help Center, and over on the left here you'll see Request a Book. Submit the book request form. So here's where I would enter the title, the ISBN, author, publisher, as much of that information as you can give us. And then we will process that request, and you'll get emails about it as you as we update the process, you'll get emails letting you know about the status of that book request. In fact, if you go to My Bookshare, you'll see a link called My Requests. If you're logged in as a teacher, these are your book requests here, and you can see that I put in 18 book requests, and so these are the ones that have already been addressed. But any open ones that you have will be here under open requests. That's how you can track those. How long does it take to get an academic book for an elementary student? So, if you're requesting a book, it's again going to depend on the complexity of the book. If it's a novel, it's pretty quick. We can get it in a few weeks added to Bookshare. If it's a book with a lot of images and graphics, it's going to take us longer to get that done. So we do ask that you give us as much lead time as possible. And of course, if we can get it directly from the publisher, we will, in which case it'll be a little bit faster. But just submit the book request and we'll keep you posted on that. If you have membership related questions, you can email membership@bookshare.org. If you have technical support questions, you can email support@bookshare.org, and we'll get those answered for you as quickly as possible. Excellent. Okay, well, Angela, any other tips or any other information you'd like to add as we wrap up here?
So we know that a lot of, some students don't have, access to the internet, and so we do provide options for that as well. So if that is an issue, then we can address that as that comes up. There's options on most of the devices, such as iPads and what have you, download the books physically to the device so you can read them offline without being, so that's an issue for students who may not have a constant access to the internet.
Right. Great point. What we're finding in those cases is that at least if students have maybe data that they can use, and we're hearing from a lot of the cell phone companies that they're offering free data or significantly reduced prices on data to allow students to have more of these options. So if they can use data on a tablet or a book to at least download the book, then they can turn the data off and they can read it on the book without needing internet access. So that certainly is one way. Another way to read offline is using Microsoft Word. In that case, though, similarly, the student would have to at least download it to their computer in Word, or a teacher could email it to them in Word, but again, they'd have to have internet access to access that email, or a teacher could put a book that's been downloaded in Word and extracted, they could put on a USB drive and mail it to a student. And then the student can put the USB into their computer and open it up and read it in Microsoft Word. So those are some options for reading books without internet access. So great point. Anything else, Angela, that you can think of that's valuable to mention?
Not off the top.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much, Angela, for your help, and thank you, Laura, in the background, for answering questions. We will send out a summary of the Q&A with a lot of links that you'll find helpful, and we will make a recording of this available as well. And if you have other questions, feel free to email us at membership@bookshare.org or support@bookshare.org, and we will get those answered right away. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and good luck with the rest of your school year, and we look forward to hearing about many more students becoming avid readers and learners thanks to Bookshare. So thanks again for joining, everybody.
Take care, everyone.